Hey, yo, ladies and gentlemen, fellas, 4-game slate. It's about damn time we got one of these smaller slates. I've been dying over here. I've been slaving away. I've been barely pulling myself with my elbows on the floor, trying to get through these 10, 11, 8-game slates. Finally, a breather for all of us today. People are probably like, hey, yo, guy, take a breather yourself. All right, a breather for all of us today, 4-game slate. Let's smack you right away with it. Draymond Green, the number 10 play in a day. Golden State is on a back-to-back today, and Mr. Draymond Green, vintage Draymond Green last night with a massive triple-double, finally shooting. This is now back-to-back games with Draymond Green taking shot attempts. This is now 4 out of his last 5 games with at least 8 shot attempts. This is very good to see. Is it running in correlation with no Wiseman and no Oubre out there? Very likely. Kevon Looney, a lower shooting player. Kent Bazemore filling in for Kelly Oubre. Nowhere near the same type of volume shooter. Now, if we wanted to look what happens on the season when we see Kelly Oubre off the court and also Wiseman off the court, it's a massive spike for Draymond. This is a decent sample now of over 300 minutes. He plays the 5th most minutes on the team when that occurs. And look at this right here. He averages 1.15 fantasy points per minute. Now, if that doesn't mean anything to you, Draymond on the season is right around 1 fantasy point per minute. So this is a massive jump. He averages 15% more fantasy points. I mean, that's massive. And now that's not going to explain why he had a triple-double last night, but when you pair it with decent minutes like one game ago against Denver, he can score 45 fantasy points by playing 37 minutes. I today have Draymond Green playing 34 minutes of play and scoring 35.04 fantasy points. So I have Draymond looking like a top play today, a top 10 play. He is one of my, as it stands right now on Patreon, link down below. I only currently have 9 guys as yeses on this slate, and Draymond Green is indeed one of them. Again, small 4-game slate, not as many options to work with. So welcome on in, everybody. I appreciate you. Take 1 second of your time right now. Like, subscribe, do those things. We will be live later today at 5 p.m. East Coast time to break down this 4-game slate, answering all your questions. So hitting that notification bell, let you know when we're doing that. And let me tell you something. We got a lot of national calendar days today. Right away, I try to celebrate National Purple On Day by putting purple on my body right now. So check that one off the list. The second one, National Bananas Day. And you already know I'm packing. And then this next one's kind of sad, National Titanic Remembrance Day. But have you ever thought, like, I'm sure somebody has seen that, 24-hour movie that's out there. You probably slept through half of it because, it bored you to death until, the thing kind of started to sink. And that's where the excitement comes in, which is kind of fucked up. It really is fucked up how we actually enjoy that type of shit, right? People like enjoying the natural disasters on TV. But have you ever sat and thought, maybe, you know what, Rose, this old woman, maybe she's not telling the full truth here? Like, we're going to this one woman for what happened on this Titanic. Because if I'm her, and it seems like maybe she did this, I'm going to make myself seem like the most attractive person that everybody wants to hang out with, a nice person who likes to give back to the poor and, hey, even sleep with the poor. And then it comes full circle, and it's kind of funny when you think about Leonardo DiCaprio in that movie playing somebody who is poor, and now when you see him today, he looked richer in the movie when he was playing himself poor. And he's still dating younger women. And then finally, the one that I think is maybe the most ironic together is National Tax Day. A lot of people probably know that today. A lot of sweats going through some people's minds. And then also National Wild Take a Guess Day, which kind of goes hand in hand, I'm sure, for a lot of your accountants out there. Stay safe in the streets. Inside the top 10 plays we go right now, people are like, why did he tell all those jokes, or why did he have to say all those national calendar days? Hey, it's what we're doing. We only got 4 games to cover today. Giannis missed yesterday. I'm currently projecting in Giannis today, so we'll see what ends up happening. Obviously, if he's out, I will update these projections as always on Patreon. Giannis, I have projected for 4 more points than anybody else on the slate. So on a 4-game slate, points start to actually prioritize a lot more. Giannis has the second highest team total on the slate. I'm projecting Giannis today for 34 minutes of play and around 1.6 fantasy points a minute, a little bit more than that. So he projects out for a little over 54 fantasy points for me. It makes him pretty easily our number 9 play on the slate. We get inside the top 9 now, and the number 8 play on the slate. Maybe somebody you weren't expecting to be on the slate here, but Kevin Horter. And the big reason why Kevin Horter is going to be on the slate is he's relatively cheap. He's a nice price point in SuperDraft, 1.7x. But for the minutes that he's playing, 35, 32, and 32 minutes over the last couple of games, DeAndre Hunter remains out for this game. I'm projecting Kevin Horter today for around 33 or so minutes of play. It seems like he would have played more in these past couple of games. And Kevin Horter on the season is averaging right around 0.8 fantasy points per minute. So when I start to project out Kevin Horter for that type of production today, I start to get Kevin Horter projecting for 25.5 fantasy points. And honestly, on this slate, if you're just hitting 5x value, your fantasy point per dollar, you're bang for your buck. If it's just 5x value, you're looking like a solid play. The amount of guys that I have hitting 5x value today and also projected for over 20 points, I can count on both my hands because I believe it's 10 exactly, unless you don't count your thumbs as fingers. Then I can count it on 2 of my hands plus 2 more fingers there. So we got 10 guys that I projected for over 20 fantasy points and 10x value, and Kevin Horter ends up being one of them. He's just a decent lower mid-range value on a slate that's value. There's a decent amount of it in the 3K range, but a lot of it's projecting out for like 17, 16, 18 fantasy points. He gives you something more to that while also filling a shooting guard small forward weak position. The number 7 play on the slate is going to be Mr. Dennis Schroeder. He is $6,300 today. Before we get into Dennis Schroeder, I would like to tell you about the sponsor of the program today. The sponsor of the program is Prize Picks. You take the over-under on fantasy points or fantasy props in a bunch of different sports. So we have the fantasy points on the screen right now for their early 8 props, and they'll have more in the afternoon today. Yo, honestly, I woke up this morning and I had 11 11 ats. Normally I'll wake up with like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 if people had a nice night or they just had a question for me that I didn't see around 10 p.m. because I went to bed. 11 ats in the Prize Picks channel, and it's everybody celebrating their wins. Everybody celebrating their wins, whether it's $400, $500, $30, $200. I mean, everybody. Derek ended up binking last night. We had Rick taking home some dollar Rooskies last night, like $42 Rooskies. We had Pure Magic taking home the money bags. Everybody. I mean, we literally had 11 people tagging me and then some people who did not tag me. So a lot of people putting their money in there. $300 for AB. The goose is loose in the chat, winning $200 last night. My man, Mr. Vertigo, ended up binking as well. Everybody ended up binking last night. It was fantastic. And all that was on Prize Picks. We ended up eating on Prize Picks. Shout out to Sam Whiteside. They continue to disrespect Russell Westbrook. So use the code, get in on the winning. It's a ton of fun. Use the code SAL, S-A-L, link down below in the description. Why not win some money bags yourself? That is S-A-L in the description below. And you can follow some of these ones that I'm going to be placing right now, or you can wait until later on when more props come out. I encourage you to try it out. I have Draymond over 34 points right now. I just told you I have him projected for 35 or more. And Draymond is a very good blocks and steals players, which gives him a little bit more of a bonus. Would project him for around 37 or so when it comes to Prize Picks. So I have him a little bit over, 3 points over. Give me the over Draymond. After that, I'll be taking the under on Jason Tatum. These Boston guys, when they're all healthy, kind of cut into each other. Now I know Fournier is not there, but I'm talking about the main guys, right? Kemba, Jaylen Brown, and Tatum. So I haven't leaned the under on Jaylen Brown, but I have Jason Tatum right now for about 41 points. It's a 4-point difference early on, so I'll take Tatum on the under as it stands. Again, get involved right now. Check it out. It simplifies the way you play DFS. You can still play the lineups, but it's just a nice quick way. You have 2, 3, 4 guys that you're traveling and tracking. That's it. Not an entire lineup. Not one guy stinking out your whole lineup. A couple guys, there's some interesting ways that you can combine them together. You don't have to just purely parlay them. You can set up some ways that you can actually get some money back if one guy doesn't hit, which is a big reason why I like the idea of Prize Picks. They have some flex options and flexibility. So try it out. Linked in the description below. What are you waiting for? Get in on the winning. Join the Discord, and you can get in that channel where everybody be talking Prize Picks. So Dennis Schroeder is the number 7 play on the day today, and Dennis Schroeder has been playing really well. Back-to-back games of getting big minutes, 35, 36 minutes. I currently have Dennis Schroeder today projected for 34 minutes of play. And if I look at what he's been doing since the trade deadline, the end of March, and you start to get Andre Drummond sample in there. You don't have Anthony Davis or LeBron kind of skewing up the sample. Dennis Schroeder has placed the most minutes in the last 3 weeks or so since the trade deadline. Big sample, 363 minutes. And he's averaging 1.08 fantasy points per minute and a team high 26% usage rate. He is the guy on this team. So when you have a guy averaging over 1.05 fantasy points per minute, projecting out for 34 minutes of play, he's going to start to project in the low to mid 30s for you at a nice price point, especially on a 4-game slate at $6,300. You see a very elite right now, and I'll actually pull this up on the screen. You start to see an elite 40% assist percentage in this sample over the last 3 weeks or so. 40% assist percentage for Dennis Schroeder. 1.08 fantasy points per minute. It's making him look like a top play, the number 7 play on the day for me. The number 6 play on the slate is going to be Andrew Wiggins, and if we take up that same look that we did with Draymond without having Wiseman or Kelly Oubre on the court, you get Andrew Wiggins playing the most minutes on this team, and it makes sense. I have Andrew Wiggins for 36 minutes today. He's actually struggled in each of the last 2 games without Kelly Oubre, who is doubtful today. So I'm hoping maybe on a 4-game slate, this keeps his ownership relatively low because I still like him. He averages 0.95 fantasy points per minute, but he just secures more of a minute sample. So even on like an average, if you just take the average, you're not taking into account playing higher minutes or producing more than expected, he starts to project out for me for around 34 fantasy points today, which is right around $6,900, getting you for a 5X on a slate that lacks a lot of that. He sees a 25% usage rate with those guys off the court. That is second only behind Steph Curry on this team. So Wiggins starts to become a quality play at $6,900. It's kind of a coin flip between him and Draymond today. Based on where they rank today, it seems like I like Wiggins more than Draymond Green, and it's really just because he fills the shooting guard small forward spot where you're going to have a lot of other options at center today where Draymond can fill, and a decent amount of power forward, especially if Giannis is available. The number 5, numero cinco. Yeah, I had to think about that one for a second. Oof, that's like the easiest one out, though. Cinco de Mayo, everybody knows cinco. Numero cinco today is going to be Kevin Love at just $6,200. Now, Kevin Love today is playing on a back-to-back, so just track this. There's a chance Kevin Love can miss, and then it becomes Larry Nance night to an extent. Jared Allen came back, but Kevin Love right now, he's playing bigger minutes, 31 and 27 minutes over the last 2 games, and he's actually producing. Kevin Love has now scored 27 or more fantasy points in 5 straight games, which at $6,200, if 27 fantasy points is scored today, it's not great, but it's a floor. It's not absolutely terrible, and he scored 34 and 39 fantasy points in the last 2 games, taking more shot attempts, 17 and 12, getting more rebounds, 11 in that last game, having double-doubles in 2 out of his last 4 games. So Kevin Love at $6,200 today, it is the second night of a back-to-back for a guy who was injured for a while, but he projects out for me for 32.54 fantasy points today, and that's me just giving him 28 minutes, which he can play more than that, but we have yet to really see him play on these back-to-backs today. He'll have a nice matchup against Golden State with no Wiseman, a smaller team today, Kemp Bazemore and Draymond, and to an extent, Kevon Looney taking up the 3, the 4, and the 5. But Kevin Love looks like a very quality play with upside as a man you can put in a power forward spot. Again, another guy who can go there instead of Draymond today, which makes Draymond not less appealing overall, but just less appealing compared to like an Andrew Wiggins who fills a shooting guard small forward spot. So just make sure that Kevin Love is playing today, because Kevin Love is somebody that I indeed do like. We just have to see what happens on the second night of the back-to-back. Inside the top 5 to the number 4 play on the slate, McCall Bridges. So here's the thing. Basically, everybody from Phoenix looks good to me today. On a 4-game slate, you can sell me on Chris Paul. You can sell me on Booker. Booker, and you can sell me on Ayton. All these guys who I think are slightly overpriced. And even their cheap values like Cameron Payne and Dario Saric and Cameron Johnson, all these guys, they don't look great. None of them are yeses for me, but they're all projecting out at cheap price points for like 18 points, which one of them is probably going to be needed. Maybe not from that team, but one of these cheap 3K guys is going to be needed today. But McCall Bridges' price point is slowly reducing here, even though the minutes have been productive. Now, yesterday, or that last game, they ended up losing by 20. He only plays 20 minutes. He scores 1 fantasy point. So maybe this will keep some people off of him, but now his price point has dropped all the way to $5,000. In the previous games before that, 33, 34, and 36 minutes of play, 24, 24, and 31 fantasy points. I'll take all of that, right? 24 fantasy points at 5K, not great, but then you start to think 4-game slate, it's not terrible. So at $5,000, if we're getting a price bump because his team lost or won actually against Miami by 20 points 2 days ago, then I'm going to be taking this. McCall Bridges at $5,000 with the highest team total on the slate at a 119.5 team implied total, a man who does average 0.8 fantasy points per minute, and I'm only giving him 32 minutes today. He can easily get back to his 32 or 34 that he's been playing. I have him for 26.25 fantasy points. Looks like one of the better mid-range, lower mid-range value options for this type of a slate today. Inside the top 4, we're going to start to get some nice plays today. The number 3 play in the slate is Robert Williams at $5,800. Before we get into Robert Williams, get into Patreon. What you doing? I saw a couple people signing up for the yearly membership today. When you sign up for Patreon for the yearly membership, you get 2 free months. Not a lot of people know that. You can check it out down below. If you're a current Patreon and you want to try and sign up for the yearly membership to take advantage of, saving money on 2 months. If you've been on for a month or 2 and you're like, yeah, I feel like I'm going to stick this out, especially through the NFL season, you might as well transition to the yearly membership. Save yourself some dollar rooskies. But Patreon, we have a Discord. A very active Discord. We have lineup optimizers for different sports, about 400 people in that Discord. Lineup optimizers. We have projections, ranks, top plays, a bunch of stuff that will help you. Basically, the whole goal is to reduce your research time, make it more efficient for you to play DFS. So reduce your research time, increase your chances of winning while being part of a growing community that hopefully once COVID is over and all this is past us and we can get in person and people aren't fearful, take your mask off, shake your hands, do all those things back to normal life. We can do some events in person. But check it out. It is linked down below on Patreon. I encourage you, hey, if you got some coin, if you want some coin on some of the prices, if that many people won in the Discord, I know from the live stream a lot of people won. So if you got some extra coin right there, you're in a nice financial spot to be joining. Maybe you've been thinking about it. Here's your nudge to join down below. Check it out. Join the community. When you get in there, be like, hey, yo, I made it. I'm in here. And we'll be like, yo, what's going on, fella? How you doing today? Or lady, how you doing today? The number 3 play in the slate is Robert Williams at $5,800 today. And it just comes down to this, a very high producer who's still getting minutes. I know Tristan Thompson is back, and Tristan Thompson on this slate is actually going to end up being in play just because I haven't projected for 20 plus minutes. Robert Williams over the last couple of games, though, even with Tristan Thompson back, 27 and 26 minutes. I have Robert Williams today at 26 minutes. I haven't projected for 1.3 fantasy points a minute. And when that is the case, he projects out for over 30 fantasy points for me, and he's below $6,000, which makes him a quality play today. My number 3 overall play on the slate, and he's one of my 9 yeses as it stands right now. I mean, all you need from him is what he's basically been doing the last couple of times out there. Get 7 or 8 rebounds, get around 8 or 10 shot attempts, and you'll probably end up scoring around 30 fantasy points more times than not. Based on how close you shoot to the basket, you're going to get a 60% true shooting percentage. Inside the top 1, and we go to the top 2, and this one we're going to have to break down. The number 2 play on the slate is Hassan Whiteside. Yesterday, I liked Hassan Whiteside a lot. I'm going to pull a popcorn machine right now, but once we saw Hassan Whiteside was not starting, I was not on Hassan Whiteside as much, and I believe it was the right decision no matter what the outcome was. Now, the outcome was that Hassan Whiteside played 23 minutes in that game, and you can see him all the way here at the bottom. Whiteside played 23 minutes in that game and ended up scoring 40 fantasy points, but this might have been very fluky, so just keep an eye on this and just know the risks going into today. Hassan Whiteside is this guy in the bottom here, and I'll do an entire screen share so we can see this easier. So here's the minutes from yesterday's game. We're doing this just a screen share. Don't worry, my beautiful face is not on the screen right now. Damian Jones ends up starting the game. He plays 6.5 minutes. It was not Hassan Whiteside that checks in off the bench. It was Maytu, the rookie, comes in and plays 5.5 minutes. So now 2 centers have entered the game, neither of them Hassan Whiteside. Remember the game before. Hassan Whiteside only played 3 minutes with these 2 centers playing more minutes than him. That's the game where Rashawn Holmes got hurt. Rashawn Holmes is not expected to play today. Now Damian Jones checks back in at the beginning of the second quarter. So now you've had 3 rotations for centers. Neither of them have been Hassan Whiteside. This is very discouraging. But Damian Jones comes in and he commits a personal foul, an offensive personal foul, picking up his 2nd foul in that game, which they quickly take him off the bench, a guy who gets in a lot of foul trouble in Damian Jones in general. But then Hassan Whiteside comes in, plays very well, and ends up playing 10 minutes and 46 seconds to close out the second quarter because they go on a 9-0 run and a 5-0 run, a lot in part to Hassan Whiteside. He ends up then checking back in and playing 12 minutes in the second half. But this is the scary thing. Does Hassan Whiteside check in right here if Damian Jones picks up foul trouble? Because Damian Jones comes in and plays 1 minute. If he doesn't get in foul trouble, if he just plays half decent, maybe he stays for another 6 minutes. And then at best, Hassan Whiteside is playing 6 minutes in the first half, or maybe they just go right back to Mato and Hassan Whiteside's not playing at all. So this is scary. They went through 3 center rotations without putting in Hassan Whiteside. I know he played 23 minutes yesterday, but foul trouble and the fact that he came in and played very well helps him, of course. So that is my concern with Hassan Whiteside. I'm giving him only 18 minutes today. You might be saying he played 23 minutes yesterday. Yes, I know he played that many, but it was not expected for him to get that. I think Whiteside was only going to play 18 to 20 minutes at most yesterday, and there's a real argument to say he might have only played 5 or 6 minutes in that game. Now, Maytu Metu only played those 6 minutes in the first half, so did he get hurt? Did they just not want to play him anymore? It was very weird, the rotations yesterday. And assuming that Whiteside continues to come off the bench, you're taking a risk. You're taking a risk that they can split his bench minutes with Metu, give Damian Jones 18 to 20 minutes, and now you're looking at Whiteside playing 10, 12, 14 minutes and never getting you there. Especially after having a massive game yesterday, I do think that he'll pick up a decent amount of ownership, whether he starts or not. And there are reasons to be avoiding him today. Now, Sal, you're saying all these things, but he's your second-ranked player on the slate. Yeah, I'm giving him 18 minutes. He averages 1.25 to 1.3 fantasy points a minute, so he's going to project out nicely. I'm just telling you about the cautions. Basically, if there's no ownership on him today, you can play him and you can take those risks. If there's a lot of ownership on him today because of what he did yesterday and he's still cheap, it starts to become a little bit riskier to take those risks. Riskier to take those risks. What the fuck you saying, guy? But that's a breakdown. That's a breakdown of Hassan Whiteside. He is my number 2 play on the slate right now as it stands, but I just want to let you know and beware of all the risks that are indeed out there. The number 1, numero uno play on the slate is going to be a man who is still not in the $7,000 range, and I really don't understand why. This man's name is Andre Drummond, a man who I am still convinced is going to be playing 28 minutes when the games stay close and he stays out of foul trouble. This has been his minutes so far with this team. 27 minutes, perfect. 22 minutes in a blowout. He was on pace to play 28. 25 minutes in a game that ended up blowing out and he had 4 personal fouls. He was on pace to play 28. He got pulled at the last 3 minutes of the game. And then this last time out, 24 minutes and 4 personal fouls kept him from playing about 27 and a half minutes. So I'm giving Drummond 28 minutes today. I'm giving him around 1.4, 1.35 fantasy points per minute in a nice matchup against Boston. Tristan Thompson, Robert Williams, not much of a matchup in my opinion. And that starts to make Andre Drummond project out as my number 1 overall yes on the slate. I have Andre Drummond for 28 minutes for me, and he currently ranks out for 36.9 fantasy points today. So he looks like a strong option. Obviously, a lot of centers we just talked about, Robert Williams, Whiteside, and Drummond. So you're going to have to choose at most 2 of these guys since none of them are power forward eligible. A lot of centers in general on the slate. Kevin Love is power forward center eligible. You have Giannis and Drummond, right? So a lot of guys down there in the bigs. So you're going to have to try and find your value probably at the guard and small forward position. We have a couple of those options on the slate and a couple of those options on the screen right now. There's a lot of value today. So based on my point per dollar upside, guys like Toscano Anderson, Dario Saric, Kevon Looney, Cameron Payne, all these guys, Cameron Johnson, there's a lot of value on the slate today that would be inside my top 10, but none of them are cracking really 20 points. So I don't want to be putting just these fluky guys down there. They're just kind of all guys that you can punt on. So if you want to see those full projections and all those players and where they rank, check it down below on Patreon. Come join the community. Thank you for tuning in. Before you go, like, subscribe, do those things. We'll be live at 5 p.m. East Coast time later tonight. This will be the last live stream until Monday because I'll be traveling into the mountains in North Carolina. So I'll see you all in the next one, which will be later on today. We'll have an MMA live stream this afternoon, and be sure to support the sponsor of the program today, Prize Picks. We currently have on Prize Picks right now. We have the under on Jason Tatum 45 and the over on Draymond Green 34. Come join the community. Everybody was winning last night. It was absolutely fun waking up to 11 people adding me. I thought I was in some big trouble. Ended up being just everybody was binking last night. You all rock. Celebrate National Banana Day responsibly out there today. I got some coffee. I don't want to fuck this up. See y'all in the next one.